This is a crime scene unlike any you've ever seen. In order to grow tastier mushrooms, the killer actually used living people as fertilizer. This scene was accidentally discovered by 3 young men. Police soon arrived at the scene and began excavation work. The 9 victims who were unearthed were all covered in massive mushrooms. To protect this rare ingredient, the killer even set traps around the area. After forensic examination of the bodies, it was determined that each victim had been buried while still alive. To accelerate decomposition, the killer had poured natural fertilizer over the bodies and inserted breathing tubes into each one. The forensic team at the scene was baffled, but Will used his empathy to put himself in the killer's mind by simulating the killer's modus operandi. Will then realized that the killer's bizarre actions were merely to provide a nutrient-rich growing environment for the mushrooms he had planted. However, the use of his empathy plunged Will back into hallucinations. He saw the killer he had shot dead. The excessive frequency of these hallucinations took a toll on Will's physical and mental health. He subsequently sought out Hannibal, in the hope that Hannibal could help him. After learning about Will's recent situation, Hannibal tells him he is simply carrying a heavy psychological burden, and that he just needs to let go of that burden and live a normal life. He then helps Will analyze the case, suggesting that the killer is searching for some kind of connection. Hannibal's insight gives Will a breakthrough in the case. He rushes back to the lab to check, and the medical examiner informs Will that they have discovered every victim suffered from severe diabetes, which explains why the mushrooms were abnormally large. Will then voiced his own thoughts. The killer might be a doctor who could easily switch a patient's medication to induce a deep coma, allowing them to bury the victim alive. Based on Will's analysis, the sheriff immediately launched an investigation. Sure enough, the medication taken by all the victims had been prescribed by the same person. But just as the sheriff was preparing to arrest the suspect, he learned that the suspect had already resigned and left. Then, in the suspect's car, Will discovered a victim who hadn't yet been buried. Meanwhile, the police found an article about Will on the suspect's computer. The content actually mocked the police department's approach, ridiculing them for using a person with a mental disorder to investigate a murder case. Many of the police department's undisclosed case details were also revealed in this article. It was precisely because the suspect had seen this article that he had left the scene before the arrest. So the sheriff tracked down the reporter who wrote the article, and, on the grounds of leaking classified information, forced her to delete the piece about Will. He threatened that if it happened again, he would send her to a men's prison to make her experience extreme suffering, because the officer, after being suspended for leaking information to the reporter, was planning to take revenge on her.